four Senate candidates who are going towards a runoff, two different races. The reason that I want to talk about this tonight in our politics show is because there's some remarkable new ads that have been released. There's some events that are coming up over the next couple of days, get out the vote efforts. Tons of money is being poured in across the country into these two races, and in part because the control of the U.S. Senate is at stake. If the Democrats win both, then they will take control of the U.S. Senate, and that will mean that Chuck Schumer will be the majority leader because you've got the vice president. Kamala Harris will break the tie. If the Democrats do not win both, then Mitch McConnell retains his role as Republican Senate leader. Now, a couple of people, just to sort of point out who these folks are in case you haven't been paying attention to Georgia. So there we have Raphael Warnock. He's the Democrat. He's a longtime pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta for the last 15 years. He is up against incumbent Republican Kelly Loeffler. Kelly Loeffler likes to portray herself as one of the most conservative members of the U.S. Senate. Loeffler got this seat a year ago because of Johnny Isakson got sick, and so the Georgia governor, Brian Kemp, appointed Loeffler. The race is to fill out the remaining 2 years of the term, and then there'll be another race for the same seat in 2022. Then at the bottom of the screen, you have the 6-year race between David Perdue. He won 6 years ago back in 2014. He's the Republican there on the bottom of your screen against Jon Ossoff. Jon Ossoff is only 33 years old. He's a graduate of Georgetown and the London School of Economics. He was a congressional staffer for 5 years. Let's start actually with just to sort of help remind you who these folks are. Let's actually start with the Perdue Ossoff race, so you can get a better sense about who these folks are. You may recall there was a viral moment during one of the debates in which Jon Ossoff hammered David Perdue because both David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler, the two incumbent Republicans from Georgia, were involved in something of a scandal, that they sold stock after getting briefings about COVID-19 back in March. Eventually, the Senate Ethics Committee cleared Perdue, but the charges stuck around, and Ossoff made it very effectively during their debate. So let's play for you Ossoff literally destroying Perdue. Let me put my glasses on so I can make sure we run the right clip here from their debate. So here it is. Maybe we don't have it. Rubio, Warner, Loeffler. Well, you know what? Maybe I didn't bring it up. Well, that's too bad. All right, forget that. Let's go right to the. I'll pull it up while we're running this other one. This is here's an ad that just started running today. Member of Congress with more than $500 million, crooked Kelly Loeffler is using her money to shield herself from the law. On January 24th, the same day Loeffler got a secret coronavirus briefing exclusively for senators, her first concern was for her stock portfolio, not the safety of Georgians. Amid a flurry of outrage over her pandemic profiteering, Loeffler's husband, Jeffrey Sprecher, made a $1 million donation to Trump's America First Action Super PAC. Just a few weeks later, Trump's Department of Justice suddenly dropped its investigation into Loeffler's suspicious stock sales. Even her fellow Republicans on Fox News were sickened by Loeffler's craven corruption. Crooked Kelly Loeffler thinks the law shouldn't apply to rich people like her. Vote her out on January 5th. Now, because of that ad, and that ad, by the way, was by Secure Blue, Vote Blue. This ad has been seen now more than 2 million times, and it has prompted Crooked Kelly to trend tonight on Twitter. So it's a good place to start because, again, the main charge that has been brought against Kelly Loeffler is that she benefited, that her husband, by the way, her family is worth $500 million. She's the CEO of a financial services company that her husband owns. And so the argument is that Kelly Loeffler not only profited in terms of selling stock, but that she essentially got her husband to buy off the Trump Justice Department through a multi-million-dollar donation to a Trump-supporting PAC. That's the charge of the ad. Again, the ad is by most people considered highly effective, and by most accounts, this race between Loeffler and between Loeffler and Warnock is going to be very close. Now, as far as Raphael Warnock is concerned, there's some Republicans are making hay out of the fact that Raphael Warnock, when he was a preacher at Ebenezer Baptist for the last 15 years, he said something during one of his sermons that is also trending on Twitter tonight and social media, and a number of Republicans are drawing attention to this. So here it is. Here's Raphael Warnock, the Democratic candidate, and this is the video clip that Republicans are circulating. Watch.
America, nobody can serve God and the military. You can't serve God and money. You cannot serve God and mammon at the same time. America, choose ye this day whom you will serve. Choose ye this day.
Okay, so you cannot serve God and the military at the same time. Well, we're putting up a photograph of Marco Rubio because Marco Rubio has tweeted tonight, not shocked, Georgia Democratic Senate candidate Raphael Warnock said you cannot serve God and the military at the same time. These and even crazier things is what the radicals who control the Democratic Party's activists and small donor base believe. Now, what's interesting here about Marco Rubio is Marco Rubio, you may recall, in the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation hearings, he was very upset when Democrats had some questions about Amy Coney Barrett's religious beliefs, in part because Coney Barrett believed to an organization that was outside of the mainstream for Catholicism, by most accounts, an extremist religious view, according to Catholics. But there was Marco Rubio and other Republicans saying, don't you dare question Amy Coney Barrett about her beliefs. But there tonight is Republican Senator Marco Rubio from Florida in an effort to try to help Kelly Loeffler questioning the religious beliefs of Raphael Warnock from Georgia. Now, here's the other thing that's kind of ironic about this. That what Raphael Warnock said about you can't serve God in the military, a lot of people are pointing out that this is actually an adaptation of a Sermon on the Mount that was delivered by Jesus Christ. That's right. It was Jesus who said something very similar about you can't serve God and serve military and war and et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, there it is. It's politics very clearly. By the way, we're going to, before we talk about the other Senate race, and we're going to take some of your questions also tonight through Haps TV, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Periscope. We're also on live tonight. So throw your questions at me about Georgia politics or about politics in general. And by the way, how conservative is Kelly Loeffler? And let's get rid of the Amy Coney Barrett and the Marco Rubio. Kelly Loeffler is so conservative that she ran one of the, what I thought was one of the strangest ads of the 2020 campaign cycle. And again, the reason that we have these races is because there are runoffs. If you don't get above 50% in Georgia, it goes, you take the top two candidates and then go to a runoff. And so in both cases, you've got Perdue against Ossoff, both below 50%, and Loeffler and Warnock below 50%. But anyway, Kelly Loeffler is so proud of her conservatism that her campaign actually ran an ad in which she compared herself to being more conservative than Attila the Hun. Watch.
Did you know Kelly Loeffler was ranked the most conservative senator in America?
Yep, she's more conservative than Attila the Hun.
Fight China. Got it. Attack big government.
Yeah. Eliminate the liberal scribes.
More conservative than Attila the Hun.
Uh-oh.
Kelly Loeffler, 100% Trump voting record.
I'm Kelly Loeffler. I approve this message.
Did you know
so Kelly Loeffler, I mean, she's you know, perhaps the biggest Trump supporter there is in the U.S. Senate. She's got a 100% conservative voting record. It's a little bit strange to compare yourself to somebody like Attila the Hun or say you're more conservative than Attila the Hun, because the fact of the matter is I don't think a lot of Georgia voters even really know much about Attila the Hun. But putting that aside, that was her ad. She's very sort of proud of her conservatism, and so a ripe target for a number of Democrats who feel that she essentially, her family, through her husband's donation to a political action committee, was able to buy off the Justice Department from investigating her stock trades and the inside information she got about COVID-19 and the stock trades that she then made as a result. And that investigation was magically lifted soon after her husband donated several $1 million to a PAC supporting Donald Trump. But there's also, you know, Democrats are very fired up tonight because you have the charges against Raphael Warnock, like the kind we mentioned with Marco Rubio, attacking Raphael Warnock for some of the same things that, you know, essentially for being hypocrites, because there was Democrats, when Democrats brought up Amy Coney Barrett's religious views, Republicans say that's off limits. Special hello from Bob. Good to have you on board. Pablo in Los Angeles. Nice to have you here. Hello from Brett. Hello from Los Angeles. Hello, Brett. Well, they are complete two-faced hypocrites, writes, I can't read what the name is. They can't help it. It is in their evil nature. That's certainly a view that a lot of Democrats have about Republican members of Congress who show their hypocrisy on nights like tonight. And we're talking about Marco Rubio. Again, if you just joined us late, Marco Rubio was criticizing Raphael Warnock for saying in a sermon that you cannot serve God and serve the military at the same time. And Rubio says that is a crazy thing to say. even though I guess, I don't know, maybe Jesus Christ was crazy when he said it on the Mount on the Sermon, in which he also said essentially the same thing. But, you know, some people point out that perhaps if Jesus Christ was a Democrat and the control of the U.S. Senate was at issue here, that maybe Marco Rubio would make an issue of all kinds of things. Anyway, so let's talk. And by the way, special hello to Peter. Thanks for the high five award. Alex, listen to him. Thanks, Alex. Let's get now to the other Senate race. And again, both races January the 5th, tons of money pouring in. This is the race between David Perdue and Jon Ossoff. The reason I pulled up this clip and I finally have it loaded is, again, this is perhaps one of the most remarkable debate moments any of us in the world of politics have seen, at least in this cycle, perhaps going back several cycles. You got Jon Ossoff is 33 years old against David Perdue, 51. Perdue is, of course, a first-term senator running for re-election. He was the former CEO of Dollar General. He also sold some stock in 2020 after getting a briefing before the market crashed. He was then cleared by the Senate Ethics Committee, which is controlled by Republicans. But in any case, Jon Ossoff, a very smart guy, member of he was a House staffer for 5 years. He's got a graduate degree from the London School of Economics. He's got security clearances. He literally burst onto the scene, the political scene in the 2020 races with this moment that he had with David Perdue during a debate. Watch, here's Jon Ossoff, the Democrat.
Well, perhaps Senator Perdue would have been able to respond properly to the COVID-19 pandemic if you hadn't been fending off multiple federal investigations for insider trading. It's not just that you're a crook, Senator. It's that you're attacking the health of the people that you represent. You did say COVID-19 was no deadlier than the flu. You did say there would be no significant uptick in cases. All the while, you were looking after your own assets and your own portfolio, and you did vote 4 times to end protections for pre-existing conditions. 4 times. And the legislation that you tout, the PROTECT Act, it includes loopholes that specifically allow insurance companies to deny policies to Georgians with pre-existing conditions. Can you look down the camera and tell the people of this state why you voted 4 times to allow insurance companies to deny us health coverage because we may suffer from diabetes or heart disease or asthma or have cancer in remission? Why, Senator? Well, perhaps Senator Perdue would have been able to...
Okay, so, I mean, you can see a minute-long clip, and that one also got millions of views, and it brought in millions of dollars for Jon Ossoff. And Jon Ossoff is headed towards the runoff with David Perdue because he's only perhaps a percentage point behind. He's got to make up something like 75,000 votes in the runoff January 5th. And by the way, runoffs have not been kind to Democrats in Georgia. It's notoriously tough. They haven't won a runoff in Georgia in a long time. But again, this is an opportunity for Democrats to perhaps put Republicans on the defensive and take control of the U.S. Senate if they can win both races. And by most accounts, Jon Ossoff is a very strong candidate. David Perdue, by the way, has not agreed to any more debates ever since that debate moment with Jon Ossoff. Kelly Loeffler and Raphael Warnock, to their credit, to both of them, have agreed to a debate before the January 5th runoff in the special election there. So anyway, lots of interesting stuff happening in Georgia. And again, I suppose it's worth pointing out, and some of my colleagues will, probably get mad at me for saying this. In my view, the control of the Senate really doesn't matter that much, because the fact of the matter is, to get anything done in the U.S. Senate, you need 60 votes. So whether the Republicans have a 51-49 or the Democrats have a 50-50 and they break the tie because the vice president breaks the tie, and therefore Chuck Schumer's the Senate Majority Leader, there's still not a lot that can get through the Senate, regardless of who's in control. Having said that, whoever does control the Senate chamber does get to sort of dictate the pace in terms of floor schedules and when bills get brought up and how much time is given. So, in terms of being able to score political points by how the debates are framed and when things are debated on the floor of the Senate, sure, you want to have control of the Senate. And that's why, again, I think regardless of whether, people recognize that maybe not much is going to get through the Senate if it's so evenly divided, if you can't find 10 votes on either side, then, forget about your bill getting through. Having said that, and I'm reminded by some people that, well, certain bills, certain types of legislation, you only need 51, and that is true. But for the most part, you need 60. But having said that, I mean, it's still something if you control the House, which the Democrats will do, and you control the Senate, because then you can essentially squeeze Republicans regarding the schedules and when you bring things up for people's attention. So there you have it. Raphael Warnock, Kelly Loeffler, that is the special election January 5th to fill the Johnny Isakson seat that he vacated a year ago. There are 2 years left on that term. And then David Perdue and John Ossoff for a 6-year term. Both races January the 5th. Both races because nobody got above 50%. And under Georgia law, you have to get at least 50% in order to actually win a race for federal office. Let's get to some of your questions. Susan Klein, go shoe, super work. Thank you, Susan Klein. Glad to have you watching tonight. Nikki, hey David, Nikki here in Rhode Island. Do more of these. Thanks for the work you do. Okay, Nikki, we will do more of these, and I don't want to give away what's coming with HAPS, but there's some a couple technical changes that are coming to HAPS that I think all of you are going to like, and I'll leave it to them to talk about it. You'll be seeing some of it also show up on Quick Hits News. And by the way, while I'm talking about Quick Hits News, and I appreciate everybody who has subscribed to our YouTube channel over the last couple of days. We've gotten like another 100 subscribers or so. We're up to almost, I think, 1,100. In part because I was, well, look, I know because we got a nice shout out from a DC Media Girl on YouTube. This is an old friend of mine, Claire Frank, and I went on her YouTube show, which is a riot if you haven't seen it. Anyway, she posted up our link and to all of her 10,000 followers, and some of them actually decided to subscribe. I encourage everybody to subscribe because on Quick Hits News, our main show is a panel of 4 to 5 journalists. We go through the top U.S. and international stories in about 15 to 18 minutes. It's very succinct. It's to the point. We all react to each other's reporting. Everybody who's on the show has network-level reporting experience and anchoring experience. There are recognizable faces, such as Antonio Moro, who was a newsreader at Good Morning America. Richa Sandwal, you may recognize from Al Jazeera. Teresa Krug from Al Jazeera. Tal Heinrich, who I worked with at I-24 News. Michael Schur, who was at CNN and Current TV, and the Young Turks. Randall Pinkston, who was at CBS News. So lots of folks who have a lot of experience covering national, international news. And let's just go ahead and run, because why not? Let's run the promo clip for Quick Hits News since we're running so much great video tonight. Here it is. Watch.
We all know that time is precious, and credible information is more important than ever. That's why we created Quick Hits News.
Here are the latest coronavirus crisis headlines.
Every show is under 15 minutes. Accomplished journalists from around the world delivering a no BS, cut to the chase broadcast.
And I can tell you, somebody that was based in Moscow for 12 years, this stuff matters.
Smart reporting.
Millennials are the largest adult generation to vote this upcoming election.
News you can trust.
It is a popular issue among Americans.
And no wasting your time.
Let's get right to it.
Quick Hits News.
Quick Hits News. Again, if you've only got 15 minutes, we don't waste your time. We're not partisan, although some people may have their leanings that come through on the show. But for the most part, it's journalists emptying their notebooks on the stories that they want to talk about. In our morning meetings each day, we go through a rundown of 10, 12 different stories. Then people select, okay, I want this one and I want to do this. And sometimes my colleagues, Tal Heinrich, for example, is a good example. She'll come up with topics that often that I'm not necessarily on my radar, but she's an expert on the Middle East and says, I want to talk about Iran. So she was the first person who brought Iran to our attention last week when it was clear that the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, had found that Iran was enriching uranium again. So that has policy implications, as we've seen now with reporting from the New York Times, that there was Donald Trump a week ago who asked his top national security advisors for military options to bomb Iran's nuclear facilities. He apparently was talked out of it by the Secretary of Defense, the acting Secretary of Defense, and also the National Security Advisor and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who said, look, this is an issue that you ought to leave for Joe Biden. If that's to be believed, that's what they said. In any case, Donald Trump has not ordered an attack on Iran, although he certainly had put that on the table. So in any case, we've got great reporters who have their tentacles all over the world and contacts all over the world, and they bring their reporting, their stories to Quick Hits News, and we go through the top U.S. international stories. We've done a couple things the last few days about Ethiopia, which is on the brink of a civil war. I guarantee you will not see that story on any other U.S. broadcast, but because we've got people who have been in Ethiopia who can talk about the significance of Ethiopia, the second most populated country in Africa, the civil war becomes pretty significant in that sort of, when it's explained by people who can tell you why. So hats off to Teresa Krug, who's been bringing us that story. And Richa Sandwal, who's in Mumbai, India, has been talking about the pandemic there and the reaction during the election to Kamala Harris, who's Indian American, and the reaction in India to her being elevated to the vice presidency, which is going to happen in January the 20th. By the way, I've gotten some questions from family and friends about the election and these lawsuits. So I could give you a quick update on that while we're looking at some of your questions here. And again, you can join the conversation through HAPS television app, through Twitter, Periscope, YouTube, Facebook. We got the comments. They're already sort of lining up here in my broadcast studio. I just have to put my glasses on to see it. And thanks to Cameron Sagri, just joined. How will Biden's foreign policy differ from Trump's foreign policy platform? That's a great question, and it's timely. The way it's going to differ, particularly in the Middle East. So Joe Biden has indicated he wants to rejoin the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, which put a clamp on Iran's nuclear activities. The rap against the Iran nuclear deals, it did nothing. There was nothing in the deal about Iran's influence in terms of troops and Hezbollah and sending weapons across the Middle East. And so for that reason, a lot of conservatives didn't like it. A lot of Democrats said, well, that was never the intent of the nuclear deal. It was simply to constrict their nuclear program, which according to national inspectors, it did, until President Trump got the United States out of the Iran nuclear deal, and then Iran started enriching uranium, and et cetera, et cetera. So the president has been responding with sanctions. The theory in terms of how it's going to be different in a Biden administration is that instead of so much of a, the old carrot and stick approach, instead of, the constant sort of hammering the sticks from the Trump administration, new sanctions, trying to squeeze Iran, threatening military action, the theory is that Joe Biden will come in and say, okay, Iran, start cutting down on uranium enrichment, freeze your programs, allow inspectors in, and then we'll start to relax some of these sanctions and put in place the Iran nuclear deal. So we'll see. It's a good question. Where were we going here? Oh, I know where we're going. Sorry, spaced out here. I was going to talk about the election recounts and the court challenges. So for those of you who are keeping score, Donald Trump is now one of 25 in his lawsuits. That's right. He's lost 24 lawsuits or have had lawsuits pulled or rejected by the judges. The one that he was successful in was involving Pennsylvania, that certain ballots that had to be segregated because of essentially when they were stamped, when they arrived. Even if you exclude those ballots, though, which is only about 10,000 or so, that's not enough to make up a difference in Pennsylvania. So even if you take all those ballots away from Joe Biden, it still doesn't change the numbers. The fact that Joe Biden wins Pennsylvania. Donald Trump has been tweeting out a lot of stuff today about Detroit, and I want to pull this up and make sure I've got it exactly correct. The argument that we heard from Rudy Giuliani in court yesterday, who is now the Trump lead attorney on some of these lawsuits, is that there was a Democratic cabal in some of the major urban cities, Detroit, Milwaukee, Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, to steal the election. And the way that Republicans, some of them, a lot of them have recognized that this is malarkey and there's no logic to any of this. But the way that some Republicans are justifying their arguments here is an idea that, let me just pull this up, is that there, for example, Donald Trump tweeted out today that more people voted in the city of Detroit than there are actual voters. Now, I'm not quite sure where he's getting that. But here are a couple of facts. Again, what Donald Trump said is, in Detroit, there are far more votes than people. Nothing can be done to cure that giant scam. I win Michigan, President Trump said. Well, according to the Michigan Secretary of State, the number of votes that were cast, the number of ballots that were cast in Detroit was 250,138. 250,138. The U.S. Census reports that the number of people who live in Detroit, 670,000. So, okay, roughly more than 1 out of 3 actually voted, and maybe that's high, but the idea that there are more people who voted than there are people who live in Detroit, that's nonsense. And that's why Twitter keeps slapping Donald Trump with these warning labels that his tweets are wrong or factually incorrect, et cetera, et cetera. Brett, great reporting award. Thank you, Brett. Cameron, thank you. You got it. Let's take a look at some of the other questions. Hey, David, Nikki. Oh, we already did that. Trump is still president. Work across the aisle is all we can tell you. Look, there's, it should be very clear. And it was pointed out to me earlier today, in Great Britain, after their election, the new prime minister takes over the next day. Here in the United States, it takes us a couple of months. But that's why we call the president a lame duck president. And there is this sort of argument that has been made apparently to President Trump from some of his top aides and advisors that something like going to war is not something you should do right now. That the problem of Iran, to the extent that you think it's a problem, should be left to Joe Biden. It's why there's been so much controversy in the news lately over President Trump's announcement that he's withdrawing troops from Afghanistan and Iraq. That has been widely criticized by NATO. It's been widely criticized by even Republicans like Mitch McConnell, who said in the well of the Senate that this was a mistake. It's also not something that is welcome news at the Biden transition, because what they would rather do than suddenly look up when they take office on January 20th and realize they've lost another 3,000 troops who have been sent out of Afghanistan and Iraq. And by the way, the Taliban now controls more territory than it did before 9/11. But this is something that, the Biden administration would like to sort of know that things are sort of status quo right now, so that when he takes over, then he can make the decision about whether troops have to be removed or added, et cetera, et cetera. So, it works both ways. People want to say, well, work with the president, as somebody just wrote on the Twitter, on the comment section here. And I think it's Alex who wrote, Trump is still president, work across the aisle. That's nice to work across the aisle with the president, but it also should work the same way, right? I mean, the president should be working across the aisle to make sure that the next president of the United States isn't handcuffed by any of his policy decisions, whether it's war, whether it's troops. And oh, by the way, an update, the Biden campaign had been asking for briefings, both national security briefings on the COVID response, the vaccine, how it's going to be rolled out, and the transportation of all the vaccines and the doses and what's been set up in terms of infrastructure. They still haven't gotten anything. Nothing from the Trump administration. Joe Biden said the other day that this could cost people their lives, that the Biden administration the Biden transition goes much longer without understanding, even at a lower level. It doesn't have to be President Trump to Joe Biden, but sort of a lower level of what is the plan for rolling out 300 vaccine doses, whether it's Pfizer or Moderna or all the rest, where the final studies are done and they're getting FDA approval. What is the process? Because there's a lot of help that, say, the Pentagon or other agencies of the U.S. government can do in making sure that the logistics work. For example, the Pfizer vaccine, as was reported today by Michelle Yu, who is another one of our colleagues at Quick Hits News, you have to keep the vaccine at minus 112 degrees. Well, that rules out the ability of most rural hospitals to be able to hold the vaccine. So you're going to need special trucks, special transportation to get the vaccine to rural areas so that people can actually get it. Well, who's going to do that? Private companies? They're not going to volunteer. What's the contract process? Is it going to be the military? Is it going to be some government-private partnership? How are they going to get paid? Who's going to be responsible? Who's got authority? Or is it going to be every state for themselves, which is sort of what the policy has been right now? Well, the Biden administration doesn't really care what the Trump administration policy is or what's been set up or not set up. They just want to know, has anything been set up? Have there been trucks ordered? Have there been companies that have been sequestered or companies that have been asked, okay, we're going to need you? Who's been in charge? Where do these things stand? Imagine that you are planning a big party with thousands of people in January, and you don't know who's on the invitation list. You know who you may invite, and you may know what kind of food you want served. But what if somebody else has already sort of made the catering arrangements or has already got the band in place? I mean, you just want to know. So you can say, okay, we're going to use a different band. Or we're going to keep some of these guys. Yeah, that's good that we got rock and roll music is going to be played. Okay, we can keep that, but let's change the food. I mean, it's just sort of it's usually common decency from administration to administration. But we'll see. I mean, there are also some people who say, look, there's plenty of time, even if Joe Biden doesn't start getting these meetings until December, once the electoral college sort of kicks in, and that's when the electors meet on December the 14th in the states, and they formally provide their certificate of who has won the election, and then that certificate gets presented to Congress. I believe it is January the 6th, if I'm not mistaken. In any case, assuming Joe Biden doesn't start getting some of these meetings until mid-December, there are a lot of people who say, well, there's plenty of time for him to get all this information, both national security-wise and also in terms of what's going on with COVID-19. A couple more questions, and then we'll let this go because we've been going almost a half an hour here. Let's see. Cameron again, they might be early to ask, if Biden underperforms in the coronavirus recovery response, will Republicans win the Senate and the House in 2022? That's a good question, actually, Cameron. The most important responsibility Joe Biden is going to have as president is going to be the rollout of the vaccine, overseeing it, making sure that it gets out on time, that people, get the vaccine, that there's a proper, what's the sequence in terms of who gets it, first responders, hospital staff, people who are vulnerable, children, elderly. All of that is going to be complicated. And how Joe Biden and his administration handles the rollout, I think, will have a huge impact in terms of what his chances are for the Democrats maintaining control of the House and possibly winning the Senate in 2022. Because think about it, winding down this pandemic, that is job number one. I think if you ask anybody about the responsibility for this government, it is winding down the pandemic, getting it behind us, getting us back to normal. It's going to be complicated. And I think Joe Biden and the Democrats are going to be judged very strongly on how they handle things over the next 6 months? It's a good question. What are your thoughts on what happened last night in Michigan with the voting council? For those of you who are, and that is from well, I can't read your name because I have a light right next to this, so sorry about that. But it's a good question too. What happened last night in Michigan is that initially there was essentially officials who oversee the ballots and the elections in Wayne County, which is the largest county in Michigan. 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, they deadlocked on certifying the results. The Republicans said there was too much stuff going on that they couldn't explain, and they didn't like some of the numbers, and so they said, we can't certify this. Well, a lot of people pointed out that based on Michigan law and based on the preponderance of the evidence and all sorts of other thresholds, that it was clear that, that the vote should be certified in Wayne County, and that, the results were the results. And a lot of people felt that these Republicans were only acting under pressure from the Trump administration, from the Trump campaign. And so initially they said, we're not going to certify this. Now, there was an opportunity for the Secretary of State of Michigan to essentially override what was going on in Wayne County and certify it anyway. It would have been a bit of pain in the ass for the Secretary of State to do that, but there were different avenues. In any case, soon after they made this announcement, there was such an outcry, and even some pressure from some Republicans who said, this is nonsense, you got to certify this, the results are the results, that the 2 Republicans then flipped and went back and said, no, we are going to certify Wayne County. It's done. Joe Biden got the votes he got. Donald Trump got the votes he got. That's the end. President Trump can tweet all he wants, as he did today, about the population of Detroit and make up stuff. But the fact of the matter is, he lost Michigan. He lost Wisconsin. Looks like he's losing. He's lost Pennsylvania. Georgia, recount, perhaps. The president has filed for a recount in Wisconsin, but you ask most Republicans away from the microphones and they'll tell you there is no chance that Donald Trump turns any of these states. All right. Put on screen above you, by the way. Let's see, Peter, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, but that's okay. We're going to end this. Let me put some stuff on the screen about I guess it's of the money. I don't know what that is. Oh, what are your thoughts on what happened last night in Michigan with the vote? Oh, look at that. Thank you, Peter Bittner. You put the message so I could see it, because otherwise I need these glasses. But even though, that was from Apprehensive Fly. What happened last night in Michigan? That's cool. This is one of the new features that Peter is telling me about with HAPS, is that we can now actually put people's comments on the screen. So I'm going to play around with this and actually do this myself. Let's see. I got to learn how to do this. I'll learn before the next one, and then I'll be able to feature your comments on the screen as I respond to them. How about that? Folks, join the HAPS TV app if you're a journalist, or even if you're not. It's a great app. It's very easy. It's easy for journalists like me to come on, and I got something in my mind, like the Georgia Senate races, and I can come on and talk about them, or talk to colleagues. It's great for journalists who want to talk to folks who are in the field. And also be sure to subscribe to Quick Hits News at the YouTube page, Quick Hits News. Just do a search, Quick Hits TV, or go to our webpage at quickhitsnews.com. When you subscribe, what it means is that the videos will be sent to you, to your inbox. So you don't even have to look for them each day. When we publish at 5 o'clock, they'll come out. 15 minutes is all you need to get caught up on the top national, international stories from journalists you know and trust. That's our pitch. And HAPS, the network of now. That'll do it for this evening. We'll do some more later in the week and some fun things coming to HAPS TV and to Quick Hits News. I'm David Schuster. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good night.